Hi you guys, my name is Olivia. I'm a stay-at-home mom of 3. I homeschool my 2 kiddos, an 11-year-old boy and a 7-year-old girl. And today I'm going to share with you guys about the Memoria Press Enrichment curriculum. So the Enrichment curriculum is not their full-on curriculum for each of the grades. This goes through, it's kindergarten, 1st, and 2nd grade, and there also might even be, I think they call it junior kindergarten, which is pre-K. I started using the enrichment curriculum with my daughter for her kindergarten year, and I have loved it so much, and I rarely ever see anybody else talk about this on YouTube or even on Instagram. And Memoria Press offers so much, so much. And sometimes it can be kind of overwhelming to see what they have and really get a good look into it, even though a lot of people use it. I have used other Memoria Press products before. I can list some videos down below where we've used it for different grades and different subjects. Memoria Press is hit and miss for me. I really love the enrichment curriculum. So I'm not gonna do a whole lot of FaceTime on it. You really get a good idea of what's inside of it when I'm gonna do a flip through of it, and you can actually see the meat and the bones that are inside. But essentially it's a read aloud curriculum. The read aloud options encompass other subjects like history and culture and science, poetry, art study, music, and some different composition things. It's different week to week. So this is not like a language arts curriculum, nor is it like a full year-long history curriculum if you're looking for that. But I am not looking for those for kindergarten, 1st, and 2nd grade. I'm really not. The amount of time I want my kiddo to sit down at a table is minimal, and so I'm just looking to kind of enrich their curriculum. I'm not looking to have them have a full-on history or a full-on science curriculum where I purchase just a science subject and I'm incorporating the different pieces of science in there. I'm really just interested in like creating a foundation for them of learning and knowledge in those subjects, and then just little tidbits that keep them interested and do a little bit of learning in it, but not deep dives. And that's what this is perfect for. So let me talk about it for a second, and then I really am going to jump right into the flip through. So each week there is a read aloud option, and it's just a teacher's manual. There's no student manual. So you're going to have a read aloud book that goes along for the literature portion, and then they're going to talk a little bit about what the book is, about the author and the illustrator, and oftentimes you go into the time period of the book when you do that, and then a little bit that you cover before you read, and a bunch of vocabulary, and then picture review and comprehension questions to ask your kiddo as you're going along about the book, about the pictures that you see, maybe the motivations behind what you think their actions were, how you think the characters are feeling based off of the words in the book and the pictures that they're looking at. So it really does start creating the idea of analysis in these little kiddos' heads without being heavy and forced and super structured and formal. And then they have an after you read section. So I am able to look through this and set up a lesson for the week pretty easily, but it's not always, you don't always get the exact same things week to week. Like sometimes in the after you read, it'll just have oral questions that you would be asking your kiddo to recall. Sometimes it has other suggestions or questions for them that would then lead you to maybe decide to do some sort of composition in a notebook and start with writing or recalling things, that sort of thing. And this just takes me a second at the beginning of the week to read through it and decide what it is I want to get out of each one of the weeks here. And then when you flip the page, it's like the part 2. So the main portion of it, the main bones of this curriculum is the literature read aloud options. And then you can also encompass all of the other components if you do the part 2. So for the part 2, you're going to have history and culture, science, art, music, and poetry. I'm going to tell you right now, I rarely ever do the art and I rarely ever do the music. But if you're looking to find curriculum to include those things into your guys' school days and especially for this age of kiddos, and you don't want something heavy, you don't want a lot, you want it to be kind of informal, or you can make it as formal and as long of a subject as you want to do, but this is perfect for that. So oftentimes for the history and or the culture, there will be a science or a social studies book that you would then use for that week, for that portion of it. On Memoria Press's website, you can buy a whole bundle for the literature for each one of the grades for enrichment. And you can also buy a bundle for this, I think they call it science and history or science and social studies. I will denote it what it is here, but you can purchase a bundle of those too. Oftentimes, if you're starting in pre-K or kindergarten and you start purchasing the bundles then for the books, they reuse the books for different years through second grade for the science and history portion of it. But that doesn't mean if you buy the bundle, you get repeats. What it means is they'll give you everything that's fresh for that year. And then there's also a list where there will be an option where you can go in and select, I can't remember, Supplemental or something like that, where it's then the books that if you're just purchasing, say, the second grade year, and you want the first and kindergarten and preschool books that correlate to the second year's curriculum, you can purchase those individually as well. You can purchase all the books individually, or you can buy them bundled. I oftentimes have had a book or 3 or 4 for each one of the years already, and so sometimes I bundled and sometimes I didn't. Sometimes I would go on to thrift books or Amazon or what have you and load them up that way. Another reason that I'm wanting to post this now, the beginning of April of 2024, is because Memoria Press rarely does sales and rarely does minimums for shipping, and so you often have to pay shipping. They're doing a first time, one time only shipping promo through May 31st of you get free shipping. And when you buy the book bundles or any curriculum, and it's heavy, they come in big boxes, it's a curriculum company, and so often what you're purchasing weighs a lot. The shipping can get pricey if you're buying bundles from Memoria Press directly. So if you are seeing this video and you're interested in any of their curriculum, especially when you have book bundles and that sorts of thing, I would consider seeing if you are able to do it before May 31st or at least on May 31st to purchase. If not, they do sell Memoria Press on other curriculum websites like Christian Book and also Rainbow Resource. They don't have, not every one of those websites has the full scope of everything Memoria Press carries, and I know that Christian Book, I can't remember about Rainbow Resource, but they do have shipping minimums and they will oftentimes give you free shipping on a minimum if you want. So it will recommend doing some sort of a study or a discussion or what have you, and it'll list the resource for the science or the history also. It's never the same as the read aloud, but it's related to the read aloud. And I will give you an example of that in the flip through, how I created kind of like a unit study for the week based off of the information that we were given and the resources we were given and in the enrichment guide. And then it also has a related art piece and then a poetry piece and music. So the poetry, because I didn't want to do a whole intentional poetry unit, I figured I could just look up the poems online and then print something off to have the poems and then like paste them in my daughter's first grade composition notebook. I have not found that they are available like that. Maybe like a 10th of the curriculum's poems are available online to find that way. And so they do recommend a resource for a poetry book, and it's like the whole book is just full of poems. And then they also have a resource you can purchase for the music, even though they list the music. So the music would be easy for you to look up on whatever streaming device that you would listen to music, and it's all common and popular things that you would be able to find and listen to otherwise. Same with the art. But if you want art cards that are intentional, everything's already put together and printed off for you, they offer art cards on Memoria Press, and they offer like the music book on Memoria Press. Something else that I have decided to purchase but is totally not necessary is the book of crafts. I'm not a super crafty homeschooling mama on my own. I always purchase art curriculum because it's not something that my brain just doesn't put things together like that. This goes along week by week with the read alouds if you're wanting another intentional, like hands-on artsy craftsy component to your homeschool. I will also give you a flip through of this, but basically for each one of the literature read alouds for the enrichment program, they have a corresponding craft for that read aloud in this craft book. I've mentioned this several times on my different videos where I've talked about this. I think that for how much money you're spending for Memoria Press and how big Memoria Press is, that they could print this off in color and that would be wonderful, but it's not. It's in black and white and that's fine. I have not been super impressed with the first grade as I was with the kindergarten crafts, but I still think that it's a nice resource to have. So this is not something that replaces language arts. This is not something that replaces math. It's not a full comprehensive curriculum. It is an enrichment curriculum. So this is a lot of the beauty subjects, and it's a way of offering that without it being time consuming and heavy, resource heavy, and like retention heavy or information heavy. Memoria Press is a Christ-based curriculum, and so there are going to be religious themes in both the comprehensive, well, the questions in general and the curriculum in general, as well as there are religious themes in a lot of the books. Like we've read about a lot of different saints and what have you for some different holidays, and I will give you an example of that in the flip through too, some ways that some religion pops up in here. So if you are secular in the sense where you avoid anything that talks about Christianity, it would be really difficult to use this curriculum, I would think, because it is Christ-based and there are mentions of Bible characters and just all sorts of things. 90% of it would not have mentions of Christianity in here, so there would be ways to skip it, especially questions and stuff, but there are stories and books that have to do with Christian figures. I'm going to get into the flip through and show you the different parts of the curriculum and then the different pieces and resources that I have used to put something together, and then for a unit study for the week, and then the different options that you can even expand more on that if you want. Okay, so this is the enrichment guide, and this is all you get. There's not student bits and then a teacher bit. This is everything. So it's got an introduction on here, and then it also kind of has these teaching guidelines for how they would suggest teaching each of the subjects in there. Here's a little bit more in depth for some of the subjects. So this is going to be the setup for each of the weeks. You've got part 1, which is always the read aloud book. It's going to have the title of the book and the author up here. And then week 2 is on the flip page, and this is going to include the other subjects: history and culture, science, art, music, and poetry. And there's always a page for notes here. In the back is an appendix, and there are some templates and some different resources back here depending on what each of the lessons called for. A main topic that has been kind of a theme throughout is Animal Kingdom for this year, and so if it's something that you want to do some sort of structured or formal instruction on it, they have some different recommendations for like cutting these out and then putting down the different examples that you come across from each one of those for each one of these groups here. There's a world map on both flat, and there's an example there of it on the globe, time zones, blank and filled in, original 13 colonies. There is some work, especially around Thanksgivings, where I have found in the different enrichment guides that they often go through stuff about the colonies. Here are some different maps for some of the different lessons. Moon phases, there's an American flag here, teeth, airplane diagram. All right, in the back is the read aloud book list, so this is for the literature portion. And then there's also the history, culture, science resource list on here as well. And then here is the poetry list. A child's book of poems, this is going to be the resource where all of these poems are found. There are sometimes in here some random ones where I have found that I can find them on the internet and then print them off otherwise, because I don't have this resource because I wasn't intending on making poetry a really structured subject for us this year. So it's just hit or miss whether or not I can find it online or not. These are the music and art selections for each of the weeks also. They also include this in each of the week's layouts. So let me flip to one and kind of show you how we piece some of the lessons together. Okay, this is week 1, part 1. So the read aloud book is A Visitor for Bear, and here is that book. This was a really, really sweet, fun story. I've thoroughly enjoyed the read aloud options for, I would say, 95% of the choices in both the kindergarten and this first grade enrichment curriculum. So there's an overview of what the book is, and then some information on the author and the illustrator. Oftentimes in here, depending on what the book is, it will also talk about time period sorts of things. There's always a little bit to do before you read. Sometimes it's looking at the cover and then having a discussion of what you think the book is going to be about. It's just a lot of inference work. Sometimes this also asks, does this look like it takes place now or in the past or in the future, based off of what they see? So then there's vocabulary. There's not any extended work for vocabulary. It's just words that they may not have come across yet and don't know the definitions of yet. This helps you to define that. So this is the picture review and comprehension. So it kind of goes, these go page by page. So what we do is, I think they intend you to do the picture review and comprehension the first time you read it through, because I've noticed that some of the questions sometimes will ask, what do you think will happen next, or something like that based off of someone's reaction or what have you. And the way that I break it up during the week is we will do the before you read and read it the first time, and then sometimes talk about the different vocabulary if there's something that trips her up or that she has a question about. And then the next day we do picture review and comprehension, and the third day is when we would do the after you read and any of these other activities back here. But I think you're supposed to do this all in the same time you read it for the first time. But like here, what was Bear's reaction when Mouse knocked on the door? In here, in this smaller font in the parentheses, is going to be the answer to the question. So a lot of it is they're wanting the kiddo to look at the book, hear the words, but also look at the pictures and make some inference and kind of do a little bit of analyzing and some comprehension, just some like recollection type work. And they're going to do that for the whole book through. And then the after you read is different depending on the book and the week. So here, Bear served Mouse tea. What do people sometimes put in tea? And then there's some suggested answers here. This story highlights the reward, in this case friendship, of persistence. Can you think of a Bible story in which someone had to face an unfriendly person who kept telling them no? Their example here is Moses. Recall some things that happened when Pharaoh told Moses no. If the Christian aspect of this is something that is a plus for you, and you haven't done a lot of Bible work or don't have Bible study or what have you, a lot of times the questions in here where it will refer to the Bible and Bible stories, people from the Bible, it's a good way to then do a family lookup of those Bible stories if you and or your family are not familiar with them yet. So this book in and of itself, there's no mentions of Christianity in this book. So this is Memoria Press bringing it around and connecting it to Christ. So if you are a secular family, this would be an example of, you just wouldn't ask your kiddos those questions if those Bible stories are not something that they're familiar with or you want them reading or what have you. All right, so here's week 1, part 2. So this goes with that read aloud, history and culture, science, art, music, and poetry. So here, there's a science resource case. It is the biography of tea. We had so much fun with this book. This book is really dense. So I quickly learned that I need to take 2 days to do the science and or the history, but especially the science resource. So I've started doing this for the 3rd and the 4th day, because a lot of the science resource books, they have a lot of information in them. There's a lot of depth, but I learned a bunch. I love tea, and I thought that I knew a lot about tea, but the amount of things that were taught in this book surpassed even my knowledge. And It's full of colors. My daughter, all of this information kept my daughter, it kept her attention and her interest, and she thought a lot of this was really cool to learn. So, study tea plants. Where does tea grow best, and what do plants look like? How is tea cultivated? This is all things that you can find in the resource Biography of Tea. That's here. Sometimes there is also a resource for the history and culture. Sometimes there's two, sometimes there's just one or the other. So here for history and culture, discuss tea parties and table manners. Visit a local tea parlor if possible. Practice table manners at home and in the school lunchroom if applicable. Some examples of tea time etiquette from Sister Tea Parlor in Buckner, Kentucky. Here are some examples of some etiquette that they have. Talk about how tea can be a part of a country's cultural identity and some examples. Tea is the second most consumed drink in the world after water. So we actually did have a tea party and it was really sweet. So this is an example of how you have two different resources that are like somewhat connected, but it's kind of a unit study in this way. This was my daughter's entry in her, okay, I just wanted to make sure that her name wasn't on the front here. So this is my daughter's entry in her, this is the Schoolnest first grade composition book. So this is for week 1. So I started writing these in pen, but then I recently got this little picture printer. So I just download the covers of the read aloud and then the science and or history resources that we use for each week. And I've been putting those in here, but I was just writing it with pen. And so I asked her to do exactly what this suggested. Sketch the tea plant in your composition and sketchbook. And so I said, okay, go ahead and flip through that book and find a picture of the tea plant and then sketch the tea plant. And then I want you to write down one fact that you remember. She was 6 when she wrote this, and I think that even though this is just one sentence, I think this is totally enough to kind of round out the study. China grows the most tea. I told her to make sure you pay attention to your capital letters and any punctuation that needs to go there, and I think she did fantastic. So I don't have the art cards, but these are all, I haven't come across a single one of these where it's not available online when I search it. 5 O'Clock Tea, painted in 1880 by Mary Cassatt, which is Impressionism, oil on canvas, Museum of Fine Arts. And then there's a little bit of information on the artist here, and it talks about the picture itself. So if you are looking to do art study, this is a really awesome way to implement art study into your homeschool without it being like another really big, heavy, structured sort of lesson. Memoria Press does offer all of the art cards for this curriculum if you want to purchase them online. And then music. This is Keyboard Concerto No. 1 in D minor, Allegro by Bach. So there is a link here where you can find all of the music for each of the enrichment curriculums. There's also a guide that you can buy, and I'm pretty sure that the guide includes kindergarten, first and second grade all in one bundle. So if you are purchasing this at the kindergarten level, I'm pretty sure that you can use that book through first and second grade for the music. I think it's music and art, but I can't remember. It might just be music. But this is something really easy to look up. Bach's music is available on different streaming devices, so you don't necessarily need to use the music enrichment guide whatsoever. So here's poetry. Like I said before, the resource for their poetry for this guide is all in A Child's Book of Poems. This one happened to be online, and this is where I started being a little bit confident in my ability to be able to find a lot of these poems that they list in here. Most of them I cannot, but this one I did. I did include poetry this week for this week in our unit study because I was able to find the poem. And here's just some different things that you can use the poetry in a poetry study for. I don't know if this is supposed to be algae or algae and rhyme with bulgy. It probably is. Okay, let's flip through here though. So what I did is I have label paper. So I found the poem and I downloaded the image with the poem on it and I printed it off on the label sticker paper and I stuck it in here. And then we did talk about the things that suggested talking about here. Here is an example of when I made a note. So this was Lyle Lyle Crocodile. I don't know why I said crocodile that way. Lyle Lyle Crocodile for the read aloud, and then for the science, it's miles and miles of reptiles and alligators and crocodiles. We have both of these books, but one of the options asked about looking at different reptiles and just learning more about them. And so I made a note in here in case I use this for my younger daughter when she gets older and is doing school, that this book that we have has a lot of thorough reptile options to look through. I'm not a big annotator, like note taker. So if you're someone who likes to make notes about how the lesson went or what you would do next time or what have you, this is an excellent spot to have that in. I love that they included that. Okay, here's another example I wanted to show you. So this is The Owl and the Pussycat, and this is that, if you're not familiar with it, this is a really famous poem by Edward Lear. Again, the overview tells you about the selection and then author and illustrator. So this author section was fun. We learned a lot about like nonsense words and how he actually came up with different words that we use today, how he lived and worked at the same time as Lewis Carroll did. These are before you read. The setting for this book takes place in the Caribbean, a tropical area of the world. If you wish, you can discuss the tropics. Find on a world map the Tropic of Cancer, the Tropic of Capricorn, and the equator. We did this, and this is really cool. This is not something that I've ever touched with my kids before in any of their lessons. It just hasn't come up, so the fact that this was here was really neat. This talks a little bit about the climate around the equator. As you read the book, look for plants and animals found in tropical areas. The style of architecture and clothing reminds us of the Caribbean as well. You may wish to read about and research one of these tropical plants or animals. The vocabulary you're going to come across, and then the picture and review things. Here's another example of how religion can be brought into these lessons. How did the owl and the pussycat feel towards each other? They loved each other. Toward the end of the story, what did they do? They were married. If you'd like, you can take time to discuss marriage as an institution where a man and a woman promise before God, and usually family and friends, to be united as husband and wife. You may wish to show wedding pictures and a wedding band if appropriate. What a blessing marriage and families are from God. So very easy to omit if you're not wanting to look at it like related in a biblical aspect. So here was The Owl and the Pussycat. My daughter actually loved this poem so much, and we did it around February. I'm pretty sure this was the Valentine's Day book for this curriculum, but we did it in February, and our Wild and Free homeschool co-op, like outdoor group that we get together with a couple times a month, they hosted a poetry day, and she recited this entire poem. I was so impressed. I told her she totally only, if she really wanted to, she could just do a line or two to show that it rhymes, but she was 6 and she recited this entire poem. It was really impressive. But this is a really fun look into the poem, illustrated with this owl and this pussycat in the Caribbean here. So to relate science-wise, it was in the rainforest, and this line of books here are a really common science resource that you'll find throughout the curriculum that they use for the science resources. And I think they're totally age appropriate, and you get a lot of information in here that are really approachable for kiddos, but even so, like, it's a lot of information, and I think they do such a good job. So we read through here and learned some different things about the rainforest, a tropical rainforest, which is where, if you're on it's a tropical island in The Owl and the Pussycat, and there's a lot of rainforest along the equator. So we did not do the music science option. We did this, study rainforest, and then see how many things you can find in The Owl and the Pussycat that characterize the tropics. So this is what we did here. I had her underline in red and then copy any nouns in the passage. So I wrote out, and hand in hand on the edge of the sand, they danced in the light of the moon, the moon, they danced in the light of the moon. So I wrote that out for her, and then it didn't say this in here to do that, but this is what I thought that she could get out of this week, was to, let's do a little noun work and identifying nouns. And so I had her underline all the different nouns and then copy some of the nouns down here on the other lines. I asked her to draw a picture of one of her favorite parts or whatever she wanted from the literature book. And then here I drew a little snapshot of a rainforest, and then I drew some different lines of the different layers of the rainforest, and I asked her to go through and label them, and she remembered all of these from this resource on her own. So I didn't need to help her at all, and she wrote all of these out. I know that this was a lot of me here for the prep, but you don't have to approach this curriculum like that. this is just something I decided to do. You can utilize this curriculum any way you want. You don't even need to keep one of these. It's still, I feel like, enough to just read through the different resources and get a read aloud in and chit chat about some different words and get some comprehension work in with the book, and then just read through the rainforest book or whatever the science and or history option is, just for some exposure to different topics. You don't need to keep something in a notebook. So here the art is a piece of art of an owl, and it tells about the piece and the author, the artist here. Here's the music option, and then there was no poetry here because the poem is The Owl and the Pussycat. Okay, I'm gonna go through one last example, and this is Rodchenka's eggs. This was the Easter week in this book. So this was the read aloud. It was absolutely beautiful, these pictures. It was a really gorgeous story. She does talk about miracles in here. This takes place in Russia. Well, it actually technically takes place in Ukraine, but this is before the Ukraine was an actual country. This is so pre-revolutionary Russia. So this is the read aloud option of it. And then the history resource was a spotlight on Russia. And this again was really approachable in how much information was in here. So much information, but it's not just a big dense textbook. Lots of pictures. It covers all sorts of topics. It covers past and present. It covers different art. So we read through this, and my daughter really enjoyed this too. And so I also purchased this, the Book of Crafts, and there's a book for each one of the enrichment curriculums. There's a book of crafts for kindergarten, first grade, second grade. There probably is one for junior kindergarten too, but I'm not sure. So this was the craft for this read aloud for Rodchenka's eggs, and the supply list and the teacher guidelines. So there's templates in the back of this book for a lot of the options. The arts or the craft or what have you is based off of a template. Most of the time, not all of the time. So there's guidelines here. Again, it's in black and white. I feel like it would be really cool if it were in color. It's not. Just to do a quick flip through of this, it tells you on what page for each of the read alouds that go along with this curriculum where you can find the craft for it. In the beginning is a full supply list of things that you're gonna need for this specific book. So in my daughter's notebook, I had her write out 2 things that she remembered about the Russian culture from this resource that we went through. So she chose dance is a very important part of Russian culture. In spring, most of Russia's people celebrate Easter. I then asked her to decorate or draw a picture from Rodchenka's eggs. She decided to draw an egg. And then this was the craft from that book of crafts that we did, and she had so much fun. And I feel like it's not a really heavy curriculum. It really is just kind of about exposure. And for me at this age, at this stage of these kiddos' lives, that's all I want. So when they get upper elementary, I will be purchasing a science curriculum for my daughter, and I will be purchasing a separate history curriculum for my daughter. But right now for kindergarten and first grade, second grade, I think that it has so much in it, so much. And from what I showed you that we did, you could either use just a little bit of what's in here, or you could really expand each one of those subjects, and or you could do all of the subjects and make a really, really full schedule for the week and include all of those beauty subjects. Okay, you guys, I hope you enjoyed that flip through. I hope it was informational for you. If you have used the Memoria Press enrichment curriculum before and you like it or dislike it, I'd love for you to leave your thoughts down below in the comments so we could chat about it. I think it's really helpful when parents are trying to purchase homeschool curriculum for their kiddos to use both of those outlooks as tools in deciding what they would and wouldn't use. If Memoria Press is brand new to you, I could totally recommend some of the other pieces from their line, and they are extensive, and I only have, my oldest is a 5th grader and my youngest in school is in 1st grade. So, you know, I've only done so much, but I'd love to chat Memoria Press with you down below if you guys are interested in that as well. If you guys have another enrichment curriculum that you really, really love, go ahead and leave that. Also, I know people are looking around for different curriculums right now, which is one of the reasons I wanted to do this flip through. Thanks so much, you guys, and I will see you next time.